Roadshows and stuff. I'm your host, Doug McLean.
Frank Mancina, what's going on? What do you think is going to happen in the future?
And you know what's bad is I have to hit got it on my screen or this big window does not disappear. So even if you're recording, I don't think it records me until I hit accept.
Are you sure about that?
Well, that's why we need to convert to electric vehicles. It's for the environment, I think, more than anything, and that's what's important. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Roadshows and Stuff. I'm your host, Doug McLean, here with Frank
Mancina,
our Canadian Director of Partnerships.
That's right, Doug.
Which means Frank is responsible for drinking coffee, napping,
and eating poutine.
Whatever that is, Google it, people. It is only by chance that Frank and I are wearing the identical outfits that we were months ago for part one of this episode. So,
what are the chances?
What are the chances? I can't believe I picked up the same outfit. I don't even think I washed it.
It's been cold. I'm wearing the same sweater for months now.
This is part two of our Emmy award-winning series on eating on the road. Mm-hmm. The first episode focused on both Frank and I, our histories, how we ate, how we tried to stabilize and bring normalcy to our lives when touring, different city every day, like we said, different hotel.
And some of the challenges on the road.
So what we did, we sent out an open email to all of our drive teams, individuals, teams, whomever. And we said, what are some of the challenges about eating while touring, while operating a mobile marketing program on the road? Is there anything enjoyable about it? What are the difficulties, obstacles, pleasures, yada, yada. And Frank, did we get feedback?
You know, initially we didn't get any feedback.
We didn't. I have to say, okay, we do have a couple shout outs of this episode. We do have a couple shout outs. The first of which, Raul Guajardo, one of my all-time favorite single drivers. And by that, I mean not married in a relationship, but individual single drivers, meaning he's out there alone. But within an hour, he must have sent us 45 pictures of different types of meals he was eating, the dishes, and then in each email, aside from the 50 or so attachments, it was a write-up on things he was doing to make the right choices. I'm just going to go over a few. Frank, let's react to these.
Let's do it.
He said, what's good about having a longer event or being in a particular city or location for a longer period of time, it naturally allows you more eating options. It allows for far more food prep. And like we had talked about in the first episode, grocery shopping. And having that foresight, you can book a room that has an oven, that has a stovetop, and hopefully cookware and a few other things. And Raul sent us like some amazing pictures of dishes he had made.
Gourmet.
Gourmet. And you want to talk about being creative and problem solving, having solutions. The funniest picture he sent, he had the coffee mug from his room, which I'm hoping he cleaned. And it was filled with pasta sauce, like marinara, like heating up in the coffee machine.
Smart.
That was brilliant, because not only did I never consider that, I would not have thought that would exist in the known world. He mentioned also stocking your tractor with healthy food choices to avoid fast food. Now, that's something else we had talked about. You know, if you're out of options, you're in the middle of nowhere, it's like Arby's or nothing. But with enough advance notice and being a road warrior, you pack healthy snacks.
Yeah, so when you're at a location for a longer period of time, you just stock up on things that don't necessarily need a refrigerator. Yeah. So, your granola bars and your beef jerky and
what you had talked about. And, we found a common theme too, and that's a lot of our drivers and a lot of our drive teams travel with appliances like blenders. What else do they have? Like grills,
like
air
the George
fryers.
Foreman. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Air fryers, cookers, fry daddies, and other potentially deadly fire hazards. So that's great that we're doing that. No, I'm kidding. But you have to think like that. in order to eat and eat well. But he said, and he brought up a good point, and this was touched upon by a few people, that traveling across, the US and Canada, it allows you to experience different styles of food and in specialties that you would never normally experience in your day-to-day life. If you just lived at home, right?
Yeah.
Like going to Chinatown in San Francisco, or having barbecue in Memphis, or gumbo in New Orleans.
In New Orleans, yeah.
Stuff like that. And actually that's pretty cool. And it does give you the opportunity to experience that type of food and those lifestyles. K-Clav got back to us.
One of our favorites.
Dominating the roads day by day.
What he was saying,
Kevin Clav.
He went into talking about some of the appliances that he uses. That being an air fryer, an egg cooker, which didn't think of. But
what is an egg cooker? What does that mean?
No idea. I think he just opens up his hood, in the middle of the desert, and fries an egg in there. No, but he also
throw up an egg cooker.
He also touched upon like the seasonings too, right? Because you kind of forget about you also have to have seasonings and then to prep your foods with, right? So.
Yeah, he brought up great point. And that was another kind of common thread we saw. A lot of these people are traveling with seasonings, like just a bag of various seasonings like oregano, tarragon, rosemary. Those are the only three.
Garlic powder.
And garlic powder.
Salt, pepper, obviously.
Which I think can also make a bomb if you get bored too soon. And
go
ahead.
No, go.
He said, utensils, which we talked about, but by that he meant like tongs, spatulas. And he was the guy that he was the first one to bring up that you really have to have that mental fortitude and motivation when you're driving, when you're on the road, living that lifestyle, to like avoid preservatives, to avoid like the fakeness in food and all the crap that's out there, and to try and eat cleanly.
Agreed.
Who do we have next? Oh, Red and Judy Corbett. You want to talk about award-winning drive team? Red,
past guest of Roadshows and stuff as well.
Oh, that's right. Right. Another Emmy award-winning episode. Another. What the hell was Red talking about? Oh yeah, storing food safely between events. He brought up some amazingly good points. Refrigerator in the tractor. Power goes out. You don't have a refrigerator in the tractor anymore, right? So it's not like you can travel from city to city having tons of fresh produce. I mean, you could theoretically, assuming you checked in your hotel room within a few minutes, and then you could get all your food in there. But if you're driving directly, say, to a show site to set up, I mean, you could have a lot of food that spoils. So you have to think as far ahead as you can. What else did he say? Oh, great point that you don't think, well, we had touched on this in episodes past. You're so limited by the size of your vehicle. Like if you're just driving down the expressway and you're like, oh, I want to grab a bite to eat. You're driving a 90-foot aircraft carrier, through a small city or town. You can't just go to like Bubba Joe's, whatever, right? Taco stand. Who doesn't? You have to have, consideration. You have to pre-plan when you're pulling over to the side of the expressway to go and eat at a restaurant, because 99% of them you can't, because you're driving a massive, monstrous vehicle down the highway. So that stop in and of itself would take 45 minutes just to pull off and park and get back on the highway.
Yeah, I oftentimes see semi trucks just pulled to the side in front of a Timmy's with their hazards on.
Tim Hortons.
Tim Hortons. Double.
Is Tim Hortons everywhere in the States now? Like, is that everywhere?
I don't know everywhere in the States, but they're in a bunch of states.
If it isn't, it should be. We can leave it at that, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Spoke to Keith and Sherry Schneck, another award-winning drive team. Sherry specifically, they are the meal prep masters. So what they do is they go to a grocery store. When they're in the same location for a few days, they'll do as much meal prepping as they can. And they'll make 28 pounds of spaghetti, and then they'll eat it over the course of the next 3, 4, 5 days, or stir fry, or steak, or chicken, or whatever else. And they travel with that from city to city until it's months and months old, and it dries out because it's filled with bacteria.
28 pounds of spaghetti is a lot, though.
That was the name of my first album. And Frank, something to consider, which we haven't talked about, it could potentially, not necessarily, but it could be easier if you are a drive team, husband, wife, as opposed to a single individual who's out on the road. Because one person could do prep, person could do shopping while the other is responsible for whatever the responsibilities are for that program, setting up, tearing down, dealing with clients. Or they can cook together, maybe to save a little bit of time, pre-plan together, and just make life a little bit easier in general. Our larger programs I've found have a tendency to stay in the same location for longer periods of time. So sometimes that can be more advantageous as well. But
Agreed.
And then finally, this goes back into my own history. My favorite drive team of all time, Lynn and Lloyd Bunch, who I did not start my career with, but started it in earnest with. They brought up a good point. They just sent me an email in response to all this. And they said, well, basically they mentioned like 4 or 5 meals that we had across the country. And they didn't even really have to say where it was, but I had like the most amazing tamales in my life in Texas. Actually, I think, or maybe that was, no, it was Texas. And then the most amazing steak to date I've ever had in my life in Lubbock, Texas as well. They named all these restaurants, Banana Split that we had in Calgary, greatest banana split of all time. And it was funny because I didn't know Lloyd had ordered yet. And I was ordering like a vanilla cone dipped in chocolate. And Lloyd was behind me. He's like, I got to get my fruit in for the day. And I turned around and he had like a 7-pound banana split covered in hot fudge.
Nice.
It's the funnest. But their point was you create so many amazing memories when you're on the road and you have a good meal because you remember that meal and you associate it with the location where you had it, right?
That makes sense.
And when you're out living this lifestyle, it can be a great lifestyle. When you become accustomed to it, you can create some amazing memories based on the meals you've had, the restaurants you've been to, the cultures that you've been exposed to, et cetera, et cetera. But I think bottom line, it isn't easy.
No, definitely not. But yeah, our teams and drivers in the marketing world, I'm sure in all of the trucking industry have come up with some ingenious ways of eating on the road. And I think the key or the challenge of course is just staying healthy, keeping healthy and minimizing your exposure for one to fast food and just your willpower to not eat crap.
I mean, think about that. Even if you traveled around with a blender and you're making fresh smoothies, you still have to get all the supplies, all the ingredients. You have to make them. Then you have to wash everything in your room. Yeah. Sometimes you're up against the clock because you got to hit the road by a certain time. These guys are all making DOT hours, right? So they're up against the clock in more than one way. So, and they have like strict schedules. So hats off to them. It is impressive, and it is something that people do not talk about a lot. So hopefully we put up some good photos in this one. And it's a little bit of an eye-opener, I think.
Agreed.
So Frank, that kind of wraps up the meat and potatoes, no pun intended, of part 2, of eating on the road. I think that brings us to stuff.
I think so, yeah. That's stuff.
So go ahead, Frank. Hit us with the stuff.
Actually, Doug, this is your turn. Your turn.
This is pretty serious. This kind of gets religious a little bit. No, it doesn't. If you could be reincarnated as any figure in history, who would it be and why? Now, you can't say something easy like Jesus or whatever, because no offense to Jesus, but he led a pretty miserable life, right? He didn't get good recognition until like a couple hundred years later. So not that would be your motivation.
Jeez, Doug. This is a tough
provoking one. That's why this is not your normal podcast. All right.
Reincarnate as any
person in history. It could be current, could be past, but you would be born as them and have to live their life. Go through all their trials and tribulations, enjoy their successes, endure their failures. You'd have to go through everything. So
can I pass to you right now?
You can pass to me.
Okay, good. Because you clearly already thought about it because you came up with the answer or came up with the question.
I have not. And this answer is not based in pure wealth alone. When I say Jeff Bezos and the fact that he just ordered a $900 million mega yacht, and that they're like literally tearing down bridges in Scandinavia to get it out of the port. But people like that, they've revolutionized the world that we live in. Not to sound like I'm reading a 10th grade or grade 10 book report or something for social studies, but really they've revolutionized. I sit on my sofa at night watching a Netflix series. I want to order a 400 pack of rubber bands. Boom, pull out my phone. I got rubber bands the next day. It's pretty amazing, right?
Pretty amazing. That is.
All from the comfort of my sofa. And then it's exciting. The package is delivered and you don't even remember what you ordered. So, and then you open up the 400 pack of rubber bands. You're like, it's like Christmas every day. That's the worst reasoning ever given for wanting to be born as Jeff Bezos.
I was thinking Leonardo da Vinci.
Yes.
You know why? Because he came up with so many different things, like so many.
But here's why it requires more thought. Not to interrupt you, and I'm sorry for interrupting you.
But
okay. Like back in his day, as a genius as he was, like if he had a toothache, oh man, you like pretty much died, or you like had to suffer that toothache for like months on end. But yeah, right. Da Vinci's good.
Vinci's pretty good, right? It's just because he was an inventor, right?
Way ahead of his time.
Way ahead of his time. And just to come up to be the first to kind of understand some of that stuff, which I obviously cannot say any of it.
But it's crazy because when he did that at his time, he was like the only one.
Yeah.
It's like there had been astronomers before him. There had been like mechanical engineers, not that they were called that back in the day. But he really dissected the human organism, the mechanical, structure of things. And I think actually Bill Gates paid like $9 billion for one of his original like pamphlets or books.
Oh, really?
Do you remember that at auction a few years ago?
I don't, but
hand sketched. I may have just
$9 billion is quite the price.
It certainly is. Speaking of the price, Frank, what are we talking about next time? This should be a pretty exciting episode now that I'm reading the notes for it.
I think you had the topic.
We did, and unfortunately we're out of time. So you're just going to have to tune in next time to see what that topic is. But until then, feel free to go on the internet and find us on social media.
On all of our social media channels. If you want any more information,
Uber.
or if you'd like to learn more about Roadshows and MRA, follow us. Check out our blog section of our website, and follow us at www.gomra.com.
Absolutely. All right, Frank, that wraps it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.